the Desert Enforcer. They called him Tony the Ant, small, sharp, and merciless. Anthony Spilotro wasn't the kind of man who made threats twice. The first time you crossed him, he warned you. The second time, you vanished. Born on May 19, 1938, in Chicago's tough West Side, Tony Spilotro was one of 6 sons in an Italian-American family that ran a small restaurant called Pat's Sandwich Shop. But the Spilotros didn't stay behind the counter for long. The neighborhood was crawling with gangsters from the Chicago outfit, and Tony quickly found that his real education came from the streets. By 16, he was expelled from Steinmetz High School. By 22, he was arrested for the murder of William Billy McCarthy, a small-time thief he had killed during a bar fight, a cold, impulsive murder that earned him his reputation for violence. Spilotro was charged with the murder, but was later acquitted due to a lack of evidence. He did serve some brief jail time on some other theft and assault charges at that time. When he got out, the Chicago outfit took notice. His childhood friend, Frank "Lefty" Rosenthal, was running mob-controlled casinos in Las Vegas. Rosenthal needed muscle, someone to protect the skimming operation that siphoned millions in untaxed cash back to Chicago. Spilotro was sent to Vegas in 1971 to keep everyone in line. On paper, he was a jeweler. As the perfect cover, he opened the Gold Rush Limited, a jewelry and gift shop at the Circus Casino. In reality, he was the mob's desert enforcer. His job was to ensure the cash pipeline from the Stardust, Fremont, Hacienda, and Marina casinos flowed without interruption. Anyone who skimmed too much, talked too freely, or got greedy paid for it, often in ways too gruesome to repeat. He preferred personal messages. Back in 1962 in Chicago, one man accused of stealing was allegedly shoved into a vice until one of his eyes popped out. Another was beaten, stabbed, and buried alive in the sand outside Vegas. Spilotro believed fear was the purest currency. But Tony's taste for power grew faster than his boss's patience. In 1978, he started branching out on his own, forming the Hole in the Wall Gang. This group of burglars was based at Bertha's Gifts and Home Furnishings, a small, nondescript store located in a mall east of the Las Vegas Strip. Their specialty was drilling through concrete walls to rob jewelry stores, pawn shops, and luxury homes. In one summer, they hit over 20 targets, leaving Vegas reeling. Spilotro was supposed to keep a low profile. Instead, he strutted through casinos, flashing gold jewelry, mouthing off to dealers, and assaulting people in public. When Frank Rosenthal survived a car bombing in 1982, an attack many suspected came from Spilotro, the FBI swarmed Vegas. The bosses back in Chicago saw the headlines, the heat, and the chaos. To them, Tony had stopped being useful. By 1986, his enemies weren't across the desert. They were in his own family. That June, Tony and his brother Michael were summoned to a meeting in Bensenville, Illinois. They expected to talk business. Instead, they were beaten to death in a basement, fists, knees, and steel pipes, until nothing was left to identify but dental records. Their bodies were stuffed into barrels and buried in a cornfield near Enos, Indiana, where a farmer's tractor uncovered them days later. The mob called it quality control, a periodic cleaning-the-house operation to maintain discipline. Tony the Ant had turned Las Vegas into a desert of bones and money. He ruled through fear, and in the end, drowned in it. The Butcher Barber. They called him Albert the Mad Hatter Anastasia, a man who didn't just order murders, he systematized them. Cold-blooded precision turned him into one of the most feared killers in American history. He didn't argue, he erased. Born Umberto Anastasio on September 26, 1902, in Tropea, Calabria, southern Italy, he grew up in a fishing family with 8 siblings and a hunger for more than poverty could offer. He arrived in Ellis Island, New York, in 1919, barely speaking English, and went to work as a longshoreman on the Brooklyn docks. But the waterfront was a war zone, and violence was the language he spoke best. By 1920, at just 18, he was charged with murdering George Torino, a fellow dock worker, during a quarrel. In 1921, he was sentenced to death, the electric chair at Sing Sing prison, but his conviction was overturned after witnesses conveniently disappeared or changed their stories. It was his first miracle escape from execution. He would have many more. During the Castellamarese War of the early 1930s, a brutal mafia civil war, Anastasia sided with Lucky Luciano and Frank Costello to overthrow the old Sicilian bosses. In return, he was made underboss of the Mangano crime family, gaining control of the New York waterfront through the International Longshoremen's Association. Dockworkers called him the Executioner. Few ever dared say it to his face. Together with Louis Lepke Buchalter, he co-founded Murder Inc., the mafia's first organized contract-killing syndicate. They operated from the back room of a Brooklyn candy store called Midland Candy Shop. The hitmen, mostly Jewish and Italian gunmen, worked on retainer. If a boss wanted someone gone, they called Lepke or Anastasia. Between 1930 and 1940, Murder Inc. is believed to have executed between 400 and 700 people, using ice picks, ropes, and .38s to settle disputes coast to coast. Anastasia didn't just give orders, he often showed up in person. According to informant testimony, he strangled a truck driver who refused to pay tribute, and he shot a tailor because he didn't like the fit. And once, when a subordinate hesitated before carrying out an order, Anastasia grabbed the gun and did it himself. Witnesses described his rages as animalistic. On April 19, 1951, his boss, Vincent Mangano, disappeared and was never seen again. Anastasia, supported by Luciano and Costello, was immediately elevated to boss and took control of the group, which would later become the Gambino family. His power was absolute. His paranoia was worse. Anyone suspected of disloyalty vanished, their bodies turning up days later in the East River, or never at all. But his impulsiveness made enemies. He began authorizing unsanctioned hits, random dress store murders, killing civilians for disrespect. When his ally Frank Costello was nearly killed in an attack ordered by Vito Genovese, Lucky Luciano's underboss, Anastasia found himself blamed by association. His underboss, Carlo Gambino, calm where Anastasia was volatile and ready to align his family under Genovese's control in exchange for support, began plotting his overthrow with Vito Genovese. On October 25, 1957, Anastasia walked into the Park Sheraton Hotel barbershop on 56th Street in Manhattan, his usual spot. As the barber draped a hot towel across his face, two men in trench coats and scarves entered. Without a word, they opened fire. 5 bullets tore through him. In his final moments, Anastasia rose, lunging toward his reflection in the mirror, believing his killer was still there. The glass shattered. He collapsed onto the floor, tangled in the barber's chair, blood pooling beneath the white sheet. The gunman escaped into the mourning crowd. They were never identified. Some believe one of them was Crazy Joe Gallo, but no charges were ever filed. The hit sent shockwaves through New York. It was the first time a major mafia boss had been executed in public, not in the shadows, but in broad daylight, in a midtown barbershop. Newspapers splashed the photo of his blood-stained chair across the front page. It became an enduring mafia symbol. Albert Anastasia, the man who built a business on death, died exactly as he lived, quick, ruthless, and theatrical. The Dapper Don, they called him the Dapper Don, immaculately dressed, with a diamond pinky ring, a silk tie, and a smile that could charm a jury. But behind the grin was John Gotti, the man who turned murder into a media brand. Born October 27, 1940 in the Bronx, Gotti was the 5th of 13 children in a poor Italian-American family. His father, John Joseph Gotti Sr., was a day laborer who rarely worked. Young John learned early that power got you paid faster than patience. By 12, he was running errands for mobsters. By 16, he was stealing trucks off the Brooklyn docks. He joined the Gambino crime family under Carmine Fatico, a capo who saw potential in Gotti's boldness and temper. But it was Gotti's ruthlessness that set him apart. In 1968, he was convicted of truck hijacking and served 3 years in Lewisburg, Pennsylvania, federal prison. Afterward, he went back to work as a made man, this time as a soldier for Agnello Della Croce, the Gambino underboss who became Gotti's mentor and protector. In 1973, Gotti committed his first sanctioned murder, James McBratney, the man who kidnapped and killed Carlo Gambino's nephew. Gotti walked into a Staten Island bar posing as a cop, shot McBratney 3 times, and walked out. It was his first taste of mafia justice. Fast, personal, final. He was arrested, pleaded guilty to manslaughter, served 4 years, and was paroled in 1977. By the early 1980s, Gotti was running the Bergen Hunt and Fish Club in Ozone Park, Queens, part headquarters, part fortress. He wore $2,000 suits and diamond cufflinks, and drove a Lincoln Continental that never had dirt on the tires. But while he smiled for the cameras, he plotted his way to the top. His boss, Paul Castellano, was a businessman, not a street fighter. Castellano's quiet corporate style clashed with Gotti's ego. When Castellano failed to attend Della Croce's funeral in 1985, Gotti took it as an insult and an opportunity. On December 16, 1985, outside Sparks Steakhouse in Midtown Manhattan, Castellano stepped out of his car. Before he could reach the door, 4 gunmen in trench coats opened fire. Dozens of witnesses saw the daylight execution. Castellano and his driver, Thomas Bellotti, crumpled to the sidewalk. The killers were never legally identified, but everyone in New York knew who had ordered it, and everyone knew not to ask. Gotti became boss of the Gambino family, the most powerful crime syndicate in America. He ruled from the Ravenite Social Club in Little Italy, holding court in tailored suits, flashing smiles to the press. He was charming, quotable, and untouchable, earning the nickname the Teflon Don after 3 separate trials in the late 1980s ended in acquittals. But beneath the style was savagery. He ordered hits on rivals, informants, and even his own men. His underboss Salvatore "Sammy the Bull" Gravano once said, "He'd kill you for making him wait 5 minutes." Gotti's obsession with fame became his undoing. He couldn't stay quiet. The FBI planted bugs in his club and recorded him bragging about murders and mocking his crew. In 1992, those tapes surfaced in court. Gravano flipped, testifying against him in exchange for a reduced sentence. On April 2nd came the verdict: guilty on all counts, including 5 murders, racketeering, and obstruction of justice. On June 23rd, Gotti was sentenced to life plus 5 years without parole at Marion Federal Penitentiary in Illinois. Even behind bars, he carried himself like royalty. He got haircuts twice a week, signed autographs for guards, and gave interviews denying he'd ever been in the mafia. But cancer doesn't play by mob rules. On June 10, 2002, John Gotti died of throat cancer at age 61, locked in solitary confinement. He was buried at St. John's Cemetery in Queens. The man who loved the spotlight left in silence. His empire crumbled, his family scattered, and his legend turned myth. The Dapper Don had lived for power, respect, and headlines, and in the end, he got all 3. This mystery may be over, but the next one will keep you up at night. Watch now.